You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining us on another edition of Inside Automotive right here at the CBT Automotive Network. Credit card processing fees can add up very quickly, as most dealers know. From down payments on a vehicle to everyday service transactions, with more buyers opting for the convenience of credit card payments, what steps can dealers take to ease the burden? Joining us now is Amberly Allen, founder and managing partner of Dealer Merchant Services, a company that's all about helping dealerships save on credit card processing fees. I know you're probably going to want to take out your memo and take some notes on this one, because this is going to save you money for sure. These are the kind of solutions, Amberly, that we want to be bringing our dealer viewers, on an ongoing basis. So thanks so much for taking the time in your schedule to join us here in the studio.
So thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, Jim.
Sure. So tell us, let's start out in the beginning. Tell us about Dealer Merchant Services, who you are and what you do.
Well, I started in the automotive industry in my early 20s.
Okay.
I started a marketing company, so have been working with dealers for a very long time. And I started learning about this term cash discount and compliant surcharge. And I knew that my dealers could benefit in a great way because it was huge savings, but there's some complexities to it. And so we really started down this path to make sure we could help dealers specifically understand the compliance, the legal regulations, and also making sure that it didn't blow up the store from a CSI perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
And the cool thing, Jim, is we're $38 million in savings to the dealer body.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you work with some of the biggest auto groups in the country right now, right?
We do, thankfully.
Yeah,
Most of our stores have been based on referrals. I mean, the growth that we've had has been tremendous. And that's because dealers talk about us in their 20 groups, and that's the biggest compliment we could get.
Yeah, no question about it. That's fantastic. I understand that there, obviously you mentioned some legal requirements, compliance requirements. Whenever you say compliance to a dealer, they kind of sit up and go, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, right? So talk to us about that. Explain some of these, from the state regulations and some of the other things that have to do with the cards themselves.
Sure. Just a quick history lesson. So for 40 or 50 years, these card brands, meaning Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, you were never allowed to charge the customer anything differently if they used a credit card.
Okay.
That started to change in 2010 with the Durbin Amendment. They started regulating debit card processing costs. In 2017, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case. They determined that businesses, our dealers, have a First Amendment right to be able to communicate to their customers that if they used a different form of payment, they could save money. 2018, huge class action lawsuit, the largest class action lawsuit in United States history.
Wow.
Turns out the big banks and these card brands were colluding, and that's resulted in a huge settlement. Right? So then here we are today. Only 3 states remain with a ban on credit card surcharging. That's Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maine. But also California, Colorado, and New York have very special requirements that you have to follow.
Yeah. Now I probably have the attention of a lot of our viewers to go, do I fall into those states? And if I don't, what does all of this mean? So can you explain the differences in the cash discount program versus your compliant surcharge program?
Sure. So although they feel very synonymous, the card brands look at them differently. And again, those card brands are different than the state regulations. The card brands are your relationships with Visa and MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. And so what's important is that they don't want you charging any type of surcharge on a debit card. And that's really important from a compliance standpoint, but it's also important from a CSI perspective. We know that 87% of consumers have a debit card in their wallet, and therefore it really is a transparency of choice. We also know if you went to a cash discount and you only gave your customers cash or check as an option for the cash price, only 10% of consumers are carrying cash anymore, right? So that's really not a real choice for them.
That's right.
And so it's vital that from a compliance standpoint, you're not charging on debit cards, but also from a CSI perspective. As a consumer, you can see you want to have all the best options.
You're right. And nobody's, to your point, nobody's walking around with cash anymore, right?
That's right.
I'm surprised it's 10% actually.
I know. And that's, I think, going to continue to decrease over time. Venmo and Cash App, for example, they've gained huge popularity because the way that people pay for things is changing.
That's right.
Venmo and Cash App have the exact same policy, 3% additional if you send money via your credit card, but nothing additional if you use your bank account. There's 135 million users on those two platforms today.
Wow, that's incredible. So what should dealers be concerned with most when considering a surcharge program?
Well, I would tell you, first things first, you want to make sure that you're only charging a max of 3% on your credit cards.
Okay.
As of last April, the card brand said you could charge only 3%. It used to be 4.
Okay.
They've dropped it down to 3. You cannot charge a surcharge on any debit cards.
Okay.
But I would also say from a dealer's perspective, they want to make sure that they're communicating it the right way to their customers. We tell our dealers, we want you to communicate upfront and often both prices.
Okay.
And so we provide the tools to the dealer to make sure that they're communicating that right out front.
Okay.
We recommend, based on our experience, best practices are to communicate that credit card price
Right.
at the time of estimate in
Okay.
parts and service, right? So that it's not a surprise at the end to the customer.
Yeah.
So Jim, thanks so much for coming in. Your credit card price today is $103 if you use your credit card, but it's only $100 if you use cash, check, or debit.
Okay.
How would you like to pay?
Gotcha. Yeah. And that kind of sets the stage right there.
Sure.
So
And you
somebody
can
might
imagine,
even make accommodations before they go in to pay the bill and
course.
put money into their debit card if they so choose, right?
That's right. And
Yeah.
you can see it would land very differently, although it's a slight adjustment. If they said, Jim, your RO is $100, but it's 3% more for a credit card.
Right.
You can see if it's a surprise at the end, of course your consumer is going to be frustrated because
Right.
they didn't know up front. And
That's
so
right.
that's really where we want to make sure our dealers are communicating both prices up front
Yeah.
and often. So we help with all the word track training, everything to make sure they're presenting it the right way.
Right. I might add, you never know who your customer is. You know, you all of a sudden you walk in and you got some corporate attorney or somebody
Sure.
that is a state's attorney or whatever the case might be, or a federal attorney that goes, you did that wrong. I'm
Right.
coming after you.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That'll sometimes happen. What questions do dealers need to know to ask or even consider when choosing the right merchant company? Because I think in a lot of cases, comptrollers and dealers alike are like, oh, what do we need to be asking here, right?
Sure. What's important to note is we want to make sure their accounting department knows where to put the additional 3%, right?
Okay.
You've got all these additional surcharges coming in.
Yeah.
And so for us, we've got former controllers on our staff that make sure that we train you on how to make
Wow.
sure the money is flowing the right way.
That's cool.
And the 3% is put into the right accounts.
Yeah.
And so that's a key component, making sure that your accounting department has a smooth transition.
Sure.
Making sure that you've got all the right signage from a compliance standpoint. You're
Yeah.
required to have signage. And so we want to provide all of that. And we want to make sure that they're communicating it, again, the right way to the customer.
That's right. And we were talking about this before we got recording today. A lot of dealers don't know specifically what that number is because you were saying they group it together with a number of other fees.
That's right.
So when asked, how much is this? They'll say, it might be, $5,000 or whatever, when it's 15 grand.
That's exactly right. Well, so many of the OEMs don't have it as a separate line item
Okay.
for credit card processing on their
Right.
financial statement.
Okay.
We found that a couple of them are starting to add it because it's such a big number, but
Yeah.
oftentimes it's lumped into outside services.
Okay.
Those fees come out at the end of the month,
Right.
when the controller's the busiest. And so what we find when we do our educational webinars is we ask them, when was the last time you had a third party take a closer look at these?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's been a long time. They can't remember the last time,
Right.
many, many months. And we look at thousands of them.
Wow.
And 999 times out of 1,000, we find hidden fees, we find price increases, we find
Wow.
arbitrary fees. And so even if they aren't ready to pass along their fees, we want to educate them on making sure they're not being overcharged from
Yeah.
what they agreed to in
Yeah.
the beginning.
And few banks are going to barge into the dealer's office or the comptroller's office and go, hey, I want to tell you something about our fees, right?
That's right.
They're going to keep that kind of quiet.
Well,
right?
it even goes so far as to put it in small fine print on their statement that has to be downloaded at the
Right.
end of the month
Right.
that says, we've increased your price.
Yeah.
And if you continue to process your credit cards,
you just
you've
agreed
to it. That's right.
That's a cute program.
Yeah, I know. No dealers could get away with that.
No, exactly. So how are you different from a dealer's current provider that we just talked about? Why should a dealer choose Dealer Merchant Services as their merchant processor?
Well, it's the most important question.
Okay.
And that's because we are the only merchant provider that focuses solely on automotive and on surcharging.
Good point.
Certainly,
Okay.
there are merchant providers that can do surcharging
Yeah.
and many merchant providers that work with automotive.
Okay.
But that is our specialty.
Okay.
Of our 825 stores, 97% of those are on a surcharge program.
Okay.
And so there's not another merchant provider that has launched as many dealerships as we have on an initiative like this.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So they're bringing in the automotive pros, right,
That's
so
right.
to speak. And automotive really is a specialty type item. It's not
It
your
is.
typical retail store or delivery center or what have you. It's kind of a horse of a different color, right? When it comes
Absolutely.
when it comes to automotive
And
retail.
there's so many complexities, right? You have to talk about wholesale parts and extended warranties.
Yeah.
the service department is looked at differently in finance, and the way that you communicate that to the customer is also different.
Yeah.
And the body shops and things like that. So
Sure.
fully customizable
Yeah.
as far as that goes.
Yeah, this is one of those areas that in some cases, I know as a former dealer principal myself, you kind of go, okay, all I know is I want to focus on selling cars and
Right.
servicing cars, and I leave this to my comptroller. But at the end of the day, the dealers really need to know more about this. They need to know what's happening in their stores and where they can save that extra 5, 10, or even more per rooftop,
Sure.
right? In terms of thousands of dollars per rooftop. If you're a dealership that's got 20 stores, and I know you've got some of those clients, that's a whole lot of money per month.
Of course, our average savings is about between $5,000 and $15,000 per month per rooftop.
Wow.
But a good rule of thumb is if a dealer is spending $10,000 a month today in their credit card processing, they could save $84,000 a year and just over $250,000 every 3 years in net profit savings.
Oh my gosh.
So you can imagine
Yeah.
the juice is always worth the squeeze as far as that goes.
You just paid for their boat or some of their
Or
plane.
a bigger plane or whatever. We even have some stores that have increased their minimum wage, better health care for their employees,
Sure.
so definitely helps with employee retention.
Of course.
And even paid an entire mortgage for a brand new body shop.
Sure.
Absolutely.
What are some best practices, if you can share, that you've learned and have incorporated into your launches?
Well, I would tell you they, again, cannot profit in any way from the additional 3%.
Okay.
And so they have to use a third-party processor that's at an arm's length to ensure that that's not happening.
Okay.
How that happens is just with flat rate pricing. And so if any dealer has a question and wants to talk offline, I'm happy to really dig down deep.
Okay.
And we even take a closer look at their statements.
Okay.
If we want to run an analysis, which we do for dealers all over the country, 3 months worth of processing statements, and
Sure.
we can really show them exactly what they're spending, what their effective rate is, some
Okay.
of these things that they can really see the detail.
And you'll do that analysis free of charge, no
Absolutely.
obligation, just
Of
to
course.
say, hey, share with us some information, and we'll give you back a report that says,
Absolutely.
here's the reality in this.
That's right.
Okay.
And we find so many hidden fees.
I bet.
We had a dealer recently that played golf with his provider every week, and he was being charged an $1,150 extra fee because he had old equipment, old technology.
Oh my
and
gosh.
so,
Wow.
it's just a matter of really making sure that
Yeah.
they're aware of some of these hidden fees. And so
Right.
absolutely, we'll do that at no cost. And
Wow.
even if they're not ready to pass along the fee to their customer,
Yeah.
we can at least give them some great data points to take
Yeah.
back to their current provider.
Wow. Does that happen to you, where somebody says, thank you very much, I appreciate it, Amberly, but thanks for enlightening us, it would seem to me I'd be mad at my current provider
Yeah.
if you came in and uncovered this.
Well, you can imagine some
Yeah.
of those that have said in that fine print that we've increased your price and you've agreed to that rate increase because
Wow.
you continue to charge.
Yeah.
Those guys are pretty frustrated. They
I would
certainly
imagine.
move away
Yeah.
to their current provider, but
It's a gotcha moment,
it
right?
is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. That's
But
too
at the
bad.
same time, if we can be a resource to help them with the right data and
Mm-hmm.
the right knowledge about it, they're very thankful that we do it, even if they don't go to us. And naturally, if they decide to go to a surcharge, we're their first
Sure.
phone call.
Sure.
So.
Now, we've got thousands of subscribers and viewers to our programs, and a lot of them are actually truck dealers, and they're RV dealers, and they're motorsports, power sports, I should say. Can you work with them as well?
Absolutely, we
Okay.
would love to. We have tons of heavy trucking stores and seeing great savings with some of them.
Okay.
Thankfully, we were chosen to speak at ATD last year in Las Vegas.
Oh,
so
wow. That's great.
we speak at some of these 20 groups for these trucking guys. We've got RV and motorsports.
Okay.
We just signed a couple of Harley stores with one of our big groups as well. So
Very
we
cool.
can really custom tailor the program to their needs.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. We'd love to.
Dealers that are listening to us have this conversation, she said 5,000 to 15,000 a rooftop. Okay, if you have one rooftop, I'll take that 5 to 15 grand. But if you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or even more, and many of the people that watch do, this is a no-brainer. At least call Amberly and say, hey, come on in here. If you're willing to come in free of charge and tell us what your findings are, to her point, she'll either send you back to your provider and say, hey, what's going on here? Or she can help you go to the next level with her company. But as I've said before, these are the kinds of solutions that we want to be bringing you here at CBT News, so that you can run your dealerships not just smoother, but more profitable. And right now, as the industry goes back to this normalization, and we're seeing a race to the bottom on gross profits, and we're seeing maybe less customers, every single nickel counts. We're now back in the nickel and dime business, and this is one area that you can save a whole lot of money in, and be obviously compliant at the same time, because I would venture to say you might not be compliant in every area, and that's not something that you want to get caught on. So Amberly Allen, founder and managing partner of Dealer Merchant Services. We're going to show all the information here on the screen as to how to get a hold of Amberly. Take her up on her offer. What have you got to lose? You got nothing to lose. You want to do this for free, right?
Of course.
Okay.
And it would be a privilege to get to work with all of your dealers.
Yeah, sure. And we got some great dealers out there, and they all want to save money, and
they all
the
right
know
way.
That's right.
They never want to trip over dollars to pick up pennies as it pertains to their customer experience.
No question about it. Thank you so much for coming in. This has been great.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.